Okay, so now that we have, now that you understand what it is like to be living with ADHD, autism, or sensory disorders, the question is now what? Now what do we do? And again, I'm not trying to teach you how to teach these kids. I'm just saying these are things that can work. There's no on and off switch for ADHD, unfortunately. If there were, it wouldn't be a problem. But ADHDers need endorphins to get their brain activated, to connect that knowing and the doing parts of their brain. So anything you can create with endorphins, and I have a list here, I'm going to go over it a little more in detail in a moment, but these are things that can create, bump their interest and create endorphins for them. So intrigue or novelty, if they're wondering, just beware of rabbit holes, because you go down a rabbit hole, it is really hard to come out. But try to get something that piques their interest, or they wonder about, they're more likely to work. A passion or interest, and the difference between ADHD and autism is ADHD tends to jump from one passion and interest to another and just bounces all around, where autism will probably have one or two, maybe three different things that they really like. So without making extra work on you, without rewriting everything to fix that interest, let them alter it to something personal or make that connection to something personal. Urgency, necessity, and this is like in the video that I had with Dr. Barkley, short-term urgencies. You're saying if you won't pass the class. That's too far away. You'll miss a trip in 5 weeks. It's too far away. It needs to be something soon. 5 minutes, 10 minutes by the end of class. I really like using competition between friends. So can you beat so-and-so? Or how much do you think you can do in 3 minutes? Let them come up with a goal. And even maybe they want to come up with a time, but small minutes, small goals. Start low and work high. Let them run the timer. Again, don't take more work for yourself. Let them take that responsibility. Anything that provides endorphins, and it could vary from kid to kid. You might have to ask them or you might figure it out. So with instructions, and this goes ADHD and autism, and you'll see this in IEPs, clear instructions. Otherwise, it's just going to be so overwhelming, they're going to give up before they even try. Many kids need to picture it. They think in pictures versus words, so they need to picture it. You can have instructions. They can understand every single word in that instruction, but if reading the whole thing together does not create a picture in their brain, they're not going to understand it. We're not going to understand it. And maybe seeing an example is going to help as well. These are the kids that are going to verify something with 20 different questions, or they might just wing it. And they may vary. They may do both. And chunking, which you'll see that in IEPs or 504s a lot, keeps it from being overwhelming. It makes it seem less. So if you have a project, and it is due in 3 weeks, it's a take-home project, it's due in 3 weeks, or maybe they can work on it in class as well. It's due in 3 weeks. They're not going to start until 2 weeks and 6 days. That's when they're going to start doing it. So chunk it. So in the next 10 minutes, I need 5 things that you might enjoy doing your project about. By the end of class, you have to pick one. And then now you're going to need to brainstorm. You need to have 10 different things brainstormed by this time, and it's a doable time, not by in 3 days or whatever. And now you got the brainstorming. Now let's build a outline. And then now we have an outline. Now let's write on a paragraph from the first part of your outline, a paragraph on your second. What it does is it makes it feel less overwhelming. It makes it feel doable. And if it's doable, it's going to be more likely to be done. And when you have those short-term due dates, you have that sense of urgency, like it being June 12th, and I'm finally doing these videos because they're due today. So autism spectrum disorder, appropriate control. So if you can give them any sort of control or a sliver of control about seating, about their surroundings, about their partners, you can give them a little bit of control, maybe not even the control, but a suggestion of the control, or to be part of that. You're really going to see a big difference there. Early heads up, not the same day about big changes, even if it is something fun. Options away from irritations, and acknowledging irritations you can't fix. We cannot unplug that air purifier, but what can we do to make it more or less irritating? And sometimes even acknowledging the fact that you can't fix it, but you would be willing to if you could, that goes a long ways. Use bad itches as motivation. So I had this one student who would come in, he would always have a story he needed to tell me. It's either about his sister, about what happened in the morning, what happened yesterday, something about the weather. And in middle school, you can't sit and listen to this long drawn out story for 5 minutes at the very beginning of class. You will lose the rest of the kids. So it would be, I'd be like, okay, you need to do the warm up. And when you're done the warm up, you can tell me. And then I stretched it out because, you know, at the warm up, then I had to get kids started to work and I was still in the story. Once instructions are over, you may tell me your story. And what that did was got him to do the warm up, got him to listen to the instructions because he knew when he was done, he could tell me the story. And then everyone else was working and I could listen to his story. With ADHD, chances are they're going to forget they wanted to tell you something. So you don't have to worry about it. Autism, they're probably not going to forget, and they're probably not going to let you forget, so you don't have to take any responsibility in going to them and be like, okay, you can tell me your story now. They're not going to let you forget. Arrange socialization that they're comfortable with, and they may not be comfortable with any, and they may want to sit by themselves, and that's fine. But if they're looking for friends or looking to sit with someone, who would they be comfortable with, and is that kid comfortable with them? And sometimes a group of 3 works better, just to give that neurotypical kid a friend as well in the group. And teach others to adapt versus restricting the kid with autism. If that kid wants to sit and move his hands or wants to sit and rock in the chair, it's not hurting anybody. Just tell the kids, just leave them alone. It doesn't matter. It's not hurting you. And by showing an example of acceptance is even better, because then all the kids see that you're fine with it and you're not worried about it. It's not bothering you. So how to prepare neurodiverse students for the world that they live in. So first of all, you're probably not going to have this is probably not going to be your main thing that you need to do. So probably Vista Services or whoever they're working with will set up more for this. But to do something that makes it easier for your classroom is instead of creating the routine and the structure and the pattern that they need, teach them how to create it. So get them into it. And you might have to create it at first. But get them into figuring out how to create their own routines and their own patterns. So maybe a checklist. When you walk into my classroom, the first thing you're going to do is check for the warm-up. Make sure your iPad's charged. Make sure your pencil's sharpened, and give them a list, visual list that they can see. And it's going to take you a couple minutes maybe in the beginning, but once they get that pattern, it's going to make it so much easier. Visualization, catchphrases, code words. So catchphrases, my best story about this one is we had the student, we all struggled with him. It was very frustrating, and at times I think I was more frustrated with myself than with him because I just couldn't figure out how to get through to him. Tried every trick I knew and still couldn't get through. But catchphrases was his thing, and when I started using catchphrases and I just kept using them, it was enough to catch his attention, and he was able to redirect his brain. And that happened like on day 150 of school. And then it still took me a couple weeks to realize that, you know, that was his thing. And then after I got the catchphrases, and I even sat down and talked with him. When I say this, what does it mean? Okay, that's what it means. Now, when I say this, you have to follow that. And the one I used was stop, look, and listen. So stop before you do anything, before you say anything, just stop. Is it necessary? Is it helpful? Yes. Look around. Is this a good time to do it? If it's a good time to do it, listen. Is there someone else I should be listening? And just saying that catchphrase when he was up doing something or wanted to stop, all I had to say to him was stop, look, and listen. And he could pull his brain in and be able to do that. And that was what worked for him. Wish I'd figured that out earlier on. Giving a little bit of control and letting them keep it as long as they control it. These kids are the kids that are not given control and they're not given responsibility because they don't know how to handle it. But if they can get a little bit in small doses and they can learn how to handle it, it is going to be so much easier because now you don't have to control it because they can control it. Teaching others to ignore odd and quirky ways. And again, that goes back to, you know, just set an example. It's not hurting any of us that they do this. So don't worry about it. If we laugh at them, that is bullying. And sometimes just mentioning that bullying is enough to get kids scared off from making fun or laughing at kids. Be consistent, because consistency is key. Again, back to the patterns and the routines, but leave room for second chances, because it is also that spontaneousness is almost uncontrollable. And if there's always second chances, it's not going to, whatever they're doing, it's not going to stop. But so that's why you have to be consistent, but you do have to leave a little room, because there are going to be mistakes. But you don't want to always, if, for example, like with the deadline, always extending that deadline isn't helping. Second chance, yes, but always extending, forgiving this, letting that go, all that stuff doesn't always help. You do have to pull in to consequences. And I went over some examples there already. So for sensory processing disorder, again, appropriate control, seating, surrounding, quiet partners. If you have a kid who's very sensitive to this, don't put them next to the loudest kid in the room. Put far, far away from the loudest kid in the room. Put the loudest kid in the room far, far away from you. Anyhow, so options away from auditory, visual, olfactory irritation. So like that air purifier, or maybe something that the pattern just doesn't look, and it's so hard to explain when you look at something, it just doesn't look right, because the neurotypical brain doesn't care, but that neurodiverse brain may care that something just doesn't look right, and there's no way to fix it. And again, acknowledging irritations you can't fix and control, asking for suggestions. We can't fix this, what can we do instead? And I just want to stress over again, acknowledging that that exists goes a big way, because it tells that kid that you care. And again, teach others to adapt versus restricting the student, show an example of acceptance. So, don't hate me, positive relationships. I know we hear this over and over and over again, and I'm not talking about what you hear from principals in every single classroom management class that ever exists or ever will exist. When I'm talking about positive relationships, it's the first thing I want to bring up is these kids, we've experienced more negative interaction than anyone can imagine. It is always, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, do this, do this, do this. It's always opposite of what is your natural way, what you're naturally going to do. So giving them a goal and letting them manage it. For example, your goal is to get me to notice you working hard. Your goal is to get me to compliment your work twice a class, and telling them thank you over and over and over again. Those compliments provide endorphins, and ADHDers and people with autism, they need those endorphins. And these things, giving them a goal and letting them manage it, you're giving them responsibility, which is something that most kids don't get. And adults, a lot of adults don't get those additional responsibilities or control because they can't handle it. But by giving them a goal, small goal, and then letting them manage it themselves is telling them, I trust you. And that goes a long way. Substitutions. We're going to get back to the kid that walks in and throws his iPad on the desk. Does he do it because he hates class? Probably not. Does he do it because he hates his iPad? Probably not. But he's craving that stimulation that he gets from slamming the iPad on the desk. So what can we do instead of that? And then give them that goal. Your goal is to come into class and do this instead of slamming your iPad. Or when you walk into class, make sure your iPad's in your backpack so that you're not tempted to slam it. So it's kind of like smoking. You quit smoking, you need to add something in. So chewing gum or hard candy or whatever. You have to take something away, you have to add something in, or it's just not going to work. And then don't expect them to act neurotypical. They're not going to act neurotypical. They're not neurotypical. So find out a happy medium that works for both of you. Give them that goal. Let them manage it. So in conclusion, feel free to contact me about any further questions or aid. My goal in this is to help other people to see this side of the kids and to be able to figure out what works for them. That you can actually talk to someone that has ADHD or autism sensory point of view and be able to figure out what's going to work for you. And my email address, there it is. Again, don't forget what I said about emails, but I will try my very best to respond to them in a timely manner.